if they do get hacked, they know they will not suffer ransomware. And that is a huge budget these days. Believe it or not, many companies are taking out insurance against ransomware these days.
Welcome back to another installment of the Next Gen Case Study series. On today's episode, we have Rudy Augsburger, who is the CEO and co-founder of Omega Crypto, a company that specializes in post-quantum encryption technologies. With a strong background in cybersecurity, Rudy has been instrumental in developing innovative encryption solutions that address the challenges posed by advanced cyber threats. His work emphasizes the importance of robust security measures in an increasingly digital world, which is why we're excited to have him on the show. Rudy, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm specifically excited to kind of pick your brain on this post-quantum encryption technology stuff. But before we get into the meat and potatoes of the whole conversation, Rudy, I'd love if you could share just a quick couple of minutes on who you are, where you came from, and how you landed as the CEO and co-founder of Omega.
Well, where I'm from? Well, I'm living now in Atlanta, Georgia. Been here for the last 25 years. Originally, though, I was born in Uruguay in South America. German father, hence the name. And grew up all over the world due to my dad's work with the United Nations. But yeah, I ended up studying in the UK, electronic engineering, and then specializing in telecommunications. Worked for 16 years in telecommunications for Fortune 500 companies. Initially Siemens for about 15 years, and then another 5 years with Ericsson. And then I started my own business, consulting, business development, mostly international business development for American companies going abroad or international companies coming to the US. And yeah, I joined, we started basically Omega Crypto Omega Crypto actually began about 7-8 years ago, the actual invention of this post-quantum encryption. And I took over as CEO a year and a half ago. Reason being, it was more of a technology startup, early phase, getting patents at the time. And we wanted to go to market with a product. And basically that's when I took over and established the company here in Atlanta, Georgia. And, beginning now, relaunched the website, etc., and starting serious sales and business development work as we speak.
Based on your early experience in the cybersecurity space, I'm wondering if maybe you can share a little bit about how those early experiences shaped the way that you're approaching the work that you're doing currently.
Good question, because the original flagship of this product or the solution is that it is post-quantum resistant, and everybody talks about that today. The fear of post-quantum computing, breaking today's encryption technologies. What takes probably a year to decipher today with quantum computing can take minutes or even seconds. So everybody's looking for this. But what I came to realize is that most people do not encrypt. 80% of the data stored in the cloud is not encrypted. So basically the priorities, so the big question was, why not? The encryption technology today is 30 years old, done in the 90s by Netscape. And, but it's not even used. So, why even bother with post-quantum encryption? That was my first question. And I came to realize that current encryption is cumbersome, it's complicated. Most people don't understand it or don't know how to use it. So they rather not do it. And the whole focus also, in cybersecurity these days is about building walls, bigger walls, taller walls, thicker walls, but people get in through the walls. When the data is then not encrypted, it's up for grabs. And that's why everybody's after this. It's going to become, it's a massive economy these days already. And people are not encrypting. So, the priority changed from selling, or promoting quantum encryption to encryption that is simple and easy to use, So that changed focus big time. It's also quantum resistant, but the priority changed completely to your question.
There's this common thread in all of the people that I talk to in the cybersecurity space, which is that the technology is constantly evolving. There's always something that's going to be a threat in the future. There's always new things to protect against. I'm curious, uh, Rudy, when it comes to communicating with your potential client base with some of these really complex ideas, how do you approach simplifying the messaging so that it resonates with the people that you're aiming at?
I use examples. I mean, a very classic example is the banks.
Hmm.
If you look back, 50, 100 years ago, people were robbing banks. And banks have security. They have walls. They have bulletproof glass. They have cameras. They have guards. They have all sorts of things. To keep the money safe. They have safes with coding and all that kind of stuff. People still broke into banks. So you can get in there with a clerk, under gunpoint, for example, and the clerk will open everything. That's how they're doing it today in the cyber world. They're phishing emails and people are opening the doors. So it doesn't matter how many walls you build and how high or thick they are, and early detection or not, people are going to get to that valuable data.
Hmm.
So what we say is you need to encrypt that data in a way that, when you break into that bank, there's no money there. When you go there, you'll find monopoly money, worthless to whoever gets in. So, that will discourage hackers. That will discourage crime, if there's nothing there up for grabs. But today it's still available and easily available. I mean, you read about there's a breach happening in the world every 14 seconds. So the only way to discourage it is for it to not to be tempting, to say, well, it is worthless. And there is some complexity there. I don't want to make it sound so simple.
Right.
There is a lot of people encrypting data at rest, in transit, in emails, WhatsApp, etc. is encrypted. But it's very difficult to do encryption in use. So when you're using data, and that is the biggest resistance by people that are mining data, how to query data, etc. If it's encrypted, it gets more complex. So you have to do selective encrypting, for example, encrypt the name or encrypt the social security number or the bank information, the rest leave it without encryption so you can still use that data for analysis and statistics, etc. So that's how we go about explaining, what they need to do. So basically we're after the budget that is not being allocated for encryption, pull some of that cybersecurity money and spend it on encryption, because at the end of the day, you're going to get much more bang for the buck.
Yeah, the analogy, I love the visual of the idea of like it doesn't matter how big or tall the wall is or how thick it is, people are still figuring out ways to go over, under, and around them. And so
Exactly.
really what we need to take a different approach and look at how we're interacting with the data as it exists in real time and with some degree of encryption to basically deter whoever's doing it to not do it so that what they find on the other side is like you said, it's kind of
It's
useless, which is
worthless.
such a yeah, it's such a valuable approach to solving an issue that is a growing concern for a lot of people, especially considering the news of a breach that was so simple that it was a part of the basic framework of the very operating system that we all use on all of our computers. It's funny, I just heard somebody talk about this, and maybe I can get some insight from you. There was one company who kind of got missed. They dodged a bullet here. I think it was Southwest Airlines or something like that. And when they were trying to figure out why they weren't as affected as everybody else, turns out they're still using a Windows 3.1 operating system. And so the update was not even relevant to them. And so I wonder if there's something about the old technology that's worth kind of migrating forward. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, I did read about that, and it was Southwest Airlines.
It was okay.
Yes,
That's such a
I
funny
think I don't
thing.
know if it was Windows 95 or something
Yeah.
very old. Correct.
Yeah.
So they missed it, but no, in this case, it's not the case. Because you know, previous to the let's say what's called AES 256, which is that Netscape standard, there wasn't really any encryption in communication. I mean, if you think of the telegraph, back in the day, that was encrypted. And if you look at communication, telecom in general, the telecom world always used encryption, for voice calls, but those were TDM networks. It was a different technology. It wasn't IP. And they were encrypted. World War One communication encrypted. World War II communication encrypted. The famous movie Enigma.
Right.
So telecom was always encrypted, but the day telecom merges with IT, for whatever reason, it's the IT folks that take over security. And what is IT famous for? Building firewalls and more walls and other walls,
Yeah.
And they kind of ignored encryption. I don't have a better explanation. I've talked to a lot of encryption gurus, and they say, look, you know what, Rudy, your theory is plausible, because I can't explain it any other way.
Right.
So, there has to be a comeback of encryption, really, if we really want to take care, of people's personal data. And, in Europe is much more advanced in this these days. GDPR started over 10 years ago as far as people's privacy, to the point where a user can actually determine who uses their private information, whether that be, PII or be that your medical records or what have you. You authorize your physician, and you authorize your spouse and nobody else, or your children. So you can actually allocate permissions, like policies as to who can look at your personal data. We're far from that here in the US, unfortunately. But it will come, and one day, banks will differentiate each other by, who handles personal data better. It is going to be a competitive differentiation for them. Everyone's going to get hacked. The question is that data going to be available, sold, or, will they get ransomware extortion? That is, everybody's threat. I mean, if you look at today's CEOs, C-level worry, number 2 or 3 is getting hacked. So yeah, it has to be addressed and taken care of, and it will hopefully one day become a thing of the past.
Yeah, well, when it's as simple as social engineering, I think that becomes the gateway for somebody to infiltrate useful, valuable information, intellectual property, proprietary information, all that kind of stuff, and not
Exactly.
and just that if a human is the only thing standing between you and potentially billions of dollars of damages, which I've heard of, it's just astronomical figures in some of these cases. Video game, there was a whole thing with leaking footage from like a Grand Theft Auto, the Grand Theft Auto 6 or whatever the new game is that's coming out, and it costs them a significant amount of money in damages. So I'm curious, when it comes to finding the right people to serve and then kind of executing on that plan. Walk me through what that kind of experience looks like from discovery to deal in for your business.
Well, it does take a lot of evangelizing, for people to let you in. I mean, it's always difficult. It's always a difficult conversation when somebody's telling you that you're wrong or that you're spending money on the wrong side. I mean, people are very proud of what they do. So it is challenging, to break down the barrier to say, you will get hacked, and, it's already a common phrase that, there's people that know that they've been hacked, or there's people that have been hacked, and there's people that don't know it yet, or whether it's a matter of time. So they are aware of that threat, but they do think they're doing the right thing. So it's key to have, bold sales or business development people, prepare, load them with facts of what's going on, without necessarily setting fear into them. I mean, they're already very fearful. But, bringing them down to earth and, being able to explain to them in very simple terms, like the analogy we used earlier, as to, why don't you try something different, So when we look at the market, because if you say, okay, what is your addressable market? It's practically everybody and anybody and every company that uses digital, unless your analog, like Southwest maybe, you know, you're a target. Disney got just hacked. Anybody. It's not just like hospitals, for example. They're the ones that are hacked the most. And one of the reasons is that they are the ones who also spend less on cybersecurity and protection.
Right.
They invest a lot more money in research and machinery and people than they do in security. So they're very vulnerable. They also have very, very important data, not just people's data, but people's health. So social security numbers. I mean, I recently had a conversation with the CISO of Children's Hospital of Atlanta, which is a nonprofit hospital taking care primarily of children. And he says, we are target number one. And the main reason is they have children. And he explained to me that they have social security numbers with a perfect credit score because the children never had a credit card, never opened a bank account, etc. So those are like perfect social security numbers that are up for sale.
Right.
And then you think that they're the most vulnerable because they're the ones who spend less. And you say, man, that has to be a very ripe market. And we're currently in the process of discussing with healthcare providers, both clinics and hospitals, and provide them the software for free. So we will charge nothing for license fees. And they will have to pay, obviously, for the software integration into the systems, which is very, custom built. You have to embed yourself in the systems. That should give us a lot of publicity and brownie points for selling that into other enterprises that do have the necessary funds for that.
Yeah, it's a difficult challenge to have that conversation with the group of people who need it, uh, especially when they don't know that they need it, or they don't think that they need it, or they think they have the protection they need. So having the right tools, information, you said there's, having data for the salespeople. These are all really valuable aspects of that business development activity. And you mentioned at the top of the show that that's something that you are focusing on presently. I wonder if
Correct.
you could share what's your approach to that? Where are you kind of taking things in terms of, part of that customer acquisition?
Well, it's exactly that. Getting reference customers right now that they're willing to spend enough money as far as integration of the system into their facilities. Once they're up and running for the next, for 3 months, there'll be interesting testimonials that we could use with other industries. And we're hoping for them to, to obviously vouch for this type of solution and say, look, going this alternative route or doing something differently is probably the way to go. Again, they would probably not be able to test vulnerability until quantum computing arrives, for example. But at least if they do get hacked, they know they will not suffer ransomware. And that is a huge budget these days. Believe it or not, many, many companies are taking out insurance against ransomware these days, where insurance companies actually pay their ransom. I don't know. But there's always that small writing, they're not going to pay anything or everything. And,
Right.
if they get hacked twice, probably it's void, etc. But the pressure is mounting on them, on every company, to tighten their security. Otherwise, they won't even be able to get insurance. But just think of insurance against hacking, and ransomware becoming a budget item for companies. It's insane. It's insane.
I would have, especially in the early days, never thought that this was going to become the landscape. But then again, there's always people who think that they can game the system, trick the system, or play the system to their benefit. And so protecting your business, your IP, and all that from people like that is growingly important in today's kind of ecosystem. And then when you factor in, I don't know if you've heard anything about this, but there's this girl that I follow on social media who is documenting the development of organoids. And these organoids are basically brain matter that has been tasked with computing challenges. And one of the most recent notable milestones that I recall was when the organoid taught itself how to play Pong. And so this is
Well,
just a petri dish of cells that are made up of, brain tissue, and they have seemingly come to life and taught themselves how to navigate in a cyber world. And I can't even imagine how fast that would change the computing world completely beyond even what quantum computing can do.
sure.
Because I've dabbled in a little bit of learning when it comes to that, and even the work that's being done there is remarkable. Um,
Yep.
when it comes to kind of measuring the success of some of your marketing campaigns, there's this high level awareness. Hey, listen, these problems exist. These are the solutions that exist. These why they're broken. Here's one that doesn't break like they do. You create that type of stuff. You put it out to the world. However you do that, whether it's speaking at engagements or going to trade shows or maybe even content online. Once people kind of enter your ecosystem, how do you kind of manage the flow of them learning the things that they need to, addressing the problems that they have, and then turning them into clients?
Um, it the biggest hurdle is that first step that you mentioned. Once they believe or they become believers of encryption, to say I want to consider encryption, there's pretty much, I hate to say no competition. There's always competition. I mean, today I mentioned to you insurance companies is the competition.
Right.
If you ask our CTO, he would laugh because he's expecting technology to be competition, a similar product. But no, insurance companies are competition. But once you get them to believe in encryption, there's pretty much there's still doubts, obviously, whether this solution will be quantum computing resistant. And people that throw out it, well, I'm going to put AI on top of that, and AI will figure it out for me. And we have actually proven mathematically that it's unbreakable. Does that mean this is future proof forever? I don't want to put my hands on the fire to say this is your forever solution. Your organoid example, put quantum computing and AI on top of all of that, and God knows what their capabilities will be.
Right.
Maybe they're able to, retro engineer mathematically what we construed. Maybe, I don't know. What I do know is that it is the safest encryption available today compared to any other encryption available on the market. We've actually patented the solution. It's patented all over Europe, not just the European Union. It includes the UK, for example. It's patented in the US. It's patented in India. So what that tells you is, A, this has never been done before. And the second most important argument is that it also works. You have to prove that whatever you're saying actually works. So that's enough proof to say, okay, this specific technique does not exist anywhere else. So once you convince a customer about encryption, they really have no better solution to go to.
Yeah, it's one of those cart and horse kind of scenarios. I imagine it being like there are a number of these solutions that already exist. They're not working as we imagined them, but they're so deeply cemented into the fabric of the way that we interact with these tools that coming back from this or adjusting course, it's a very large ship that takes a long time to kind of steer in a new direction. And so uh, some of the work that you're doing, Rudy, in terms of pioneering this new technology and bringing in new ways of thinking in terms of how we protect ourselves online, I think is an admirable mission to be on, and one that hopefully is fruitful as you continue to go down that venture. Um, in terms of how you are going to measure your success, are there any specific milestones that you're kind of aiming at for the future of the development of the business?
Yes. So as of now, we're basically funding the company. We will be, the minute we have, I've said the magic number of three, reference customers that we can refer to, the ones that will vouch for us and, provide testimonials, etc. We will be doing a round of financing. So that'll be really the first test to say, what about the investment community? The ones that sponsor, incubated companies. So very early stage companies, that'll be the first real test to see, which pockets we're able to open for ourselves. That'll be the first round of financing, which we expect to be at the end of the year. When we do that, we'll be able to increase our sales activities. Start getting real VPs of sales, senior folks that have proven themselves in similar type of companies. Not necessarily from the cybersecurity space, because unless they're totally convinced, about this new approach and are ready for that kind of risk-taking kind of atmosphere. We cannot just take a standard cybersecurity salesperson. It's got be somebody that is willing to disrupt the status quo. Those kind of folks are the ones we would be needing to hire, as well as seeking partnerships. Next year, early next year, by spring, we should have, a couple of partnerships with more serious, bigger system integrators and companies that are willing to include us as part of their portfolio. Those, and if you think of stage 3, that would be hopefully getting acquired by one of those companies, either one of those partners or a competitor of theirs. So that will be the ultimate success measure, I guess, in those incremental steps that I shared with you.
Yeah, if Microsoft is listening and needs to implement this encryption technology right into their operating system, Rudy, I think they need to consider that, because that would be one of the biggest and boldest moves, is to make a big shift like that for all of our tools to kind of take on that technology. So I'm really rooting for you, man. That's ambitious goals, and there's a dire need for it, and the work that you're doing. To kind of close things up here, Rudy, you've been very generous with your time and wisdom, and for that, I'm very grateful. And I wonder if maybe in closing, you could share a piece of advice for anybody else who's kind of in a similar space, who's kind of trying to grow their business based on your own experience. Is there a piece of advice that you could offer?
Well, I wouldn't say that it's specific to this industry. I think it's really any industry. Is, when you're coming in with new technology, it's extremely hard to break into the establishments. Your name is not Intel, your name is not McAfee or Norton, so people don't know you from Adam. So, the biggest piece of advice is really to, identify, who is on fire, from a prospective customer perspective, who has the biggest need. Even if they're a no-name, I would have never thought, for example, to go after the health industry first. I was thinking, technology companies, cloud providers, and those are the ones actually they're closer to my space, which is technology, telecommunications.
Right.
But those are probably some of the most risk-averse type of companies. Okay, the minute they get hacked, and they're going to go to a big supplier, they'll never go to some small startup like ourselves. They would never even find us, and they wouldn't give us time of day. So definitely look for the vulnerable and the needy, and start building, step by step, your reputation, because it does matter to them. And if it matters to them and you be able to validate yourself with them, it's equally valid for any industry. So it really is, try to identify the weakest and help them out sincerely. Don't try to profit out of them. Just getting the publicity is enough profit for us. If we have enough people that are able to vouch for us, our reason we're willing to provide the software totally free of charge forever, free license. Once we have those, we have a solid building block, to start building upon, and then doing business as usual.
There's a sense of authenticity in the way that you aim at serving your clients that I can truly appreciate, Rudy. So thank you for such sound advice. if somebody wanted to reach out to you to perhaps work with you or pick your brain further, what's the best way for them to do that?
Get on our website or send me an email at, Rudy at omegacrypto.com. Crypto with a K.
Beautiful. We'll make sure to link to all that stuff in the show notes. And on that note, if you are looking for marketing stuff and you did want to reach out to me and my team for any reason, you can visit nextgengrowth.com. Otherwise, that's it for this episode, and I will see you in the next.